Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Flawless. So, today we're doing an online episode with attorney Conti. So, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Kristina Conti. I'm the Secretary General of the Human Rights Group National Union of People's Lawyers. So that for now, because I think we'll be uh,
Yeah, we'll
sharing more
hear
of ourselves
more.
later.
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of research myself, and I know that you've brought um, I know that you are very essential right now to a lot of the cases we're seeing that are really popular in the Philippines. So one of them is like the Duterte case. I know that you've represented a lot of victims in like extrajudicial killings, political prosecution, and other human rights violations. So I think this is going to be a really exciting episode because I think it's really cool to speak to someone who can show how they use laws not only as a profession but as a form of service to other people. Um, but let's begin. So, can you first tell me where you started where you were in high school, since this is really directed to high schoolers like me, and we want to hear from the start.
So I went to a high school far away from home. So I come from Batangas, although actually I started my elementary school days here in UP, the
Mhm.
UP Integrated School. We moved back to the province. And so that's kind of a culture shock. But then going back to high school, I went back to Diliman. So I went to the Philippine Science High School, where I was, half a promdi or from the province because I had graduated from a provincial school, but at the same time I was half from the city because I was born in Quezon City. I had my first few years at UP because my mother was a member of the staff of the non-teaching personnel in UP. She was part of the admin staff. So, Isay, as we called it, was sort of close to home because I've always had a Diliman, an address, but at the same time, it was new to me at that point. My high school is specialized and generally geared towards a science degree. And so that raises the question, why am I here?
Mhm.
I would say that my high school led me at the least to um, an appreciation of the scientific method, a more systematized approach to things in general, rather than haphazardly or spontaneously or even impulsively acting on things. So it formed quite a bit of my framework in decision making.
Mhm. Amazing. So since you came from
Yeah.
Pasay and you know that's a very like science, I know it's a very science forward high school. Was there a moment when you were in high school that you realized that you actually wanted to kind of shift focus into law?
No. In high school, we actually signed a contract. Although now I realize it cannot be enforced against 12-year-olds, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So we signed a contract where we committed to uh, go to a science school or take a science degree and pursue hard sciences. So that's a little bit nuanced, more than just simple sciences, because actually after high school I wanted to take up BS psychology, thinking that it was a science course. But then apparently the commitment was to go into a hard science course like physics, like biology. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like real pure science. So all the time in Pisay, that was inculcated that you need to go into science. My initial, maximum, minimum possibilities. My initial maximum was I would wanted to be a neurobiologist or a neuroscientist or even a neurosurgeon. Growing up, I think if I could refer to one moment, it was reading about a neurosurgeon who worked at Johns Hopkins
Hmm.
and operated on the brain. That's it.
Wow.
So neurosurgeon it is, of course. Some shades of that. Also, biology was my strongest suit in school. My most hated course or my subject was physics because I could not really imagine. I mean, atoms and molecules, like it's too small compared to biology, which had something macro that you could look at. So in school, I was at the minimum thinking of, well, because my own teacher had come from a course then, molecular biology, had come up from a course straight from undergraduate, her undergraduate degree, and taught at Pisay. So my minimum then was to be a science teacher back in Pisay. So I thought I was, confined within that particularly contentious contract. So in Pisay, I did not really entertain going into law.
So what was it that set you on the course of law then? And did you just take it when you went to college? Did you decide then?
So my first degree, entering the University of the Philippines, was molecular biology and biotechnology. It is a degree that I chose out of a list, actually a list of two courses that the PSI administration had me pick out because they disagreed or they did not prefer my first choice, which was BS psychology. They told me that, oh, this is not a hard science, this is not pure science, and could you choose another one? So it was, what was that? ECE, Electronics and Communications Engineering, or MBB. And I thought, well, I'd like to do biology. But it turns out, as I've mentioned, physics wasn't my strongest suit, particularly because you cannot see it, I cannot imagine it.
Yeah.
And when I went into MBB, I realized this is molecular. It's kind of the same. I mean, you don't really see it. And so, to be frank, I really had a hard time with the higher MBB courses. And these were courses that talked about, can you draw the DNA? So, I mean, usually we just draw the helix in Lewis structure, meaning H for hydrogen, P for phosphorus, and so forth. I'm like, man, I don't really don't understand. Really can't imagine. So that's when I started to think about other options. And I guess with so many others, you would feel more an affinity with current events. Like, this I understand. This is what's happening now. And in university, when I came into UP, one of the first like big incidents that affected me personally and the Philippines by large politically was EDSA 2. So I was there at EDSA. I think a freshman. And at that time, I wasn't an activist even. I was just a member of the Molecular Biology and Biotechnology Society and of the Association of Biology Majors. So some friends in our associations, I guess it was a thing then for everybody to stand up. So they asked people if they wanted to go to EDSA because classes had been suspended in UP. And we said, yeah, sure. So we went over there. And personally, I think that was kind of a defining moment in the sense that I was there when Gloria Arroyo was sworn in. And then the feeling of, in a sense, afterwards, the feeling of frustration that you thought that, oh wow, I was there when things should have changed, when things changed politically. But then going back to school, it felt like things settled back into place again over the course of the next few years. So while at a crossroads when I was midway into my molecular biology degree, and we were talking about this course is the molecular biology of the eukaryotes. The next subject after that would have been molecular biology of the prokaryotes. I'm like, okay. I thought of shifting. Um, my choices then were pol sci and then journalism. I ended up with journalism because they're an elective friendly course. And so some of the science courses I had taken could qualify towards that degree. So they had a lot of electives. Chemistry 16 could be credited as part of the whole degree. So, okay, fine. So I did journalism, but I think maybe in my fourth year on. So my mother is a lawyer. She worked in government for a while. She was in the courts as a branch clerk of court. She was also part of the PAO, the Public Attorney's Office, for a while. And so one of her questions obviously would be to ask, are you doing any other degree after work? At that point, I had no idea then. I just wanted to, pursue a different career at first. Although I guess, it often comes up when they ask you, where will you be 5 years from now? And I remember a moment when we were sitting with my friends on, this was in the evening, looking up at the stars on the sides of the sunken garden. Where will you be in 5 years? And I was right across Malcolm Hall, the UP Law School. So I was maybe said, oh, maybe I might try law school. My mom went to that college, and maybe she felt like, with mothers, with parents, they would say, "Oh, please go to my alma mater," and all. So it
Yeah.
was briefly on my mind. Yeah, it was briefly on my mind, but then I think the moment, and I'll just move along, the moment I really thought seriously about law school, well, was in 2006. My friend Karen Empeño disappeared.
Hmm.
That's one of the reasons, of course, it's a multifaceted reason. She disappeared. Allegedly, she was taken by Jovito Palparan. In 2007, the Supreme Court announces this sort of remedy, the writ of amparo. And so my batchmates, my friends, my group of friends who were, in a way, halfway surprised, halfway helpless when it comes to how do we find Karen Empeño. So the Supreme Court says that, and among my batchmates, among my batchmates who were activists, among my batchmates who were still in the sciences, among my friends, no one was a lawyer. And so I thought maybe I should try this. And so I did. I took the exam for the law aptitude examination. This is like the LSAT, or the law entrance exam for, do they still have that? Maybe not. Oh, but anyway, so I took the exam for the school. Right now, I don't know if there's like a standardized exam for law school. They did have that for a while, but I think it was declared unconstitutional. So anyway, my mom says, I'll pay for law school if you want to go. You can do the day program instead of the evening program, because I had thought I can continue writing for a newspaper while in the evening program. She said, no, take the day program, me wanting me to finish within 4 years. But fortunately, it took me 5 years because I had to scale back a little when I became part of the student government.
Mhm.
Eventually, when I served as the student regent of UP in my law school fourth year, people thought I was crazy. Like, why? Why take on such a big chunk of work representing like 50,000 students in the Board of Representatives while in your last year of law school?
Mhm.
And so I said, well, choices you make. And so I ended up finishing law and volunteering for the same organization that stood for Karen Empeño in court.
Wow, that's incredible. Um, so yeah, that's a really amazing story. So, Karen was one of your friends, right? So it had a more personal side to it as well.
Yeah. So Karen is my batchmate, although we weren't really classmates. I don't quite remember exactly, but I think
Yeah.
we were part of the same organization. The people you hang out with. The organization is Anak Bayan.
Hmm.
So this organization allows individuals from different colleges, sections, etc., come together. Even out of school youth were part of Anak Bayan. I thought then that, I mean, I was really curious about it. I had, again, my other organizations in UP were the MBBS and the Association of Biology Majors. And Anak Bayan came to me right after EDSA 2. They were, I think, asking for people what your thoughts were about EDSA 2. Were you there? And I said, yeah, I was there. And what did you think about it? They were the ones who did the follow up or follow through. I mean, I had to kind of understand what was happening. And if it was just by myself, I mean, I would have set it aside as, oh, okay, I was there. And yeah, good experience. but then they were the ones who gave depth further. They, I remember one of our like educational discussions. They talked about like this the system of political dynasties just taking over after the other. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I realized, wow, it makes sense because after Marcos, we had Aquino, and that's okay, great. But then the same things or the same problems uh, were still there. And so in the same case with Estrada and Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, the same problems crept up after the change in administration or change of presidents. So I said, yeah, okay, you make sense. So I joined them. Karen was one of the members. And when I was in Mascom, so I shifted to journalism, so I was in Mascom already. I was with her in this organization. I don't know why she was there,
Yeah.
but I guess she was helping out some people in that college because her college is College of Science,
Mm-hmm.
College of Social Sciences and Philosophy. So she came from the other side. I don't know. There was a bunch of us from Anakbay. I think maybe we had a common subject. So we hung out, and so this was the era, that I don't know until maybe until now, that um, club mates or org mates called each other batch.
Mm-hmm.
So like batch members. I know that this is a phenomenon more familiar with sororities.
Mm-hmm.
I think, hey batch, like that. I remember our joke then was that, okay, since we're org mates, we'll call each other batchies. So there was a few of us who were calling each other, hey batch, because we were so envious of the others who like officially called each other batch. And then we said, well, we could also adopt that.
Yeah.
And so Karen was my batchmate. And
Amazing.
we had the same sort of background. Her mom is a teacher. She was a principal at, I think, Zambales, from the province. So we
Mm-hmm.
had, some sort of similar background in that sense. We, she also was not from the college. I was shifting by then, so I was technically still an outsider. And she said, yeah, let's hang out together. So we did, and then this was around the same time that we were thinking about thesis. So writing the thesis, I don't know, hers was on farmers, fisherfolk, because we didn't want to do something very academic. We wanted to do something that would have a direct impact on people. So hers was on the farmer situation in Bulacan or Central Luzon. Mine was about government employees. And it really led us to different paths eventually. I did volunteer with the same organization where I hooked up for my thesis. So this is the Organization of Government Employees. I volunteered for them after well, I was in school and after I graduated. Karen, as we know, I think went quote unquote full time or did some work for the farmers and stayed there for, for so long. And then until she disappeared or was abducted, as we now know from the case of Palparan, she was abducted by Palparan and his men, taken, tortured even, and probably killed while in military custody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's a very impactful and personal story. Really inspiring that's the thing that pushed you towards law. Um, so when you
Of
were
course,
in,
the free
oh,
tuition helps
oh
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. Um, when you were in law school, um, is that where you decided what kind of law you wanted to practice, which is, I think, like human rights law?
Well, even before law school, definitely, I've kept my eye on that. In fact, I remember because my classmates always remind me when you are in a new school, they usually ask you to stand up and introduce yourself. I did mention that already. Well, I'm here because partly because of that. Karen's case, I want because it was real fresh then. This was 2008. Karen disappeared 2006. The writ of amparo, the Supreme Court remedy, was promulgated around 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of fresh then. things that you read about in the papers. And so I said, yeah, this is this is what I want to be. I want, and I remember, I mean, maybe I was throwing out loose terms, but I said to the interviewees during the interviews, I wanted to do litigation. So I didn't quite say like criminal law or civil law, etc. So litigation in the sense that I wanted to go to court, to stand up in court and, speak up, etc. So I think I got the term right in a sense, because generally everything is litigation. But I realized that when you say lit work, it really means appearing in court. So I said, yeah, that's what I want. But as to the cases, this is rather curious. My, on my part, I can't really say I like crim law, although I ended up like a criminal defense lawyer or a quote unquote criminal lawyer. But I wanted to do family law because as not being naturally curious, and how do I uh, make a euphemism out of this? Naturally chismosa.
Yeah.
So, family law talks about family problems. And this is where the chismosas could really come in. Like, for example, they'll be talking about a dispute between the parents
Hmm.
and what the children should do or what they are entitled to. And so you might be talking about a petition for support case, but you're really talking about how, why, when did these two people fell in love, when did they fall out of love, and so forth. So family law is really interesting for those who are naturally curious about the lives of others.
Yeah.
So that's why eventually I still do some sort of family law. And this is just heartbreaking though. I do a lot of divorce cases in the
Hmm.
sense of foreign divorces that have to be recognized in the Philippines. I help them have these divorces recognized.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing. So it's really, to me, it's really interesting how you went from, because for me, the reputation of Pasai, or what I know about Pasai, it's very like science focused, and how you move from that to journalism to becoming a lawyer. So kind of like building on that, can you kind of walk me through what you did as soon as you graduated with your law degree?
As soon as I graduated, I volunteered for the case of Karen Empeño. In fact,
Wow.
um, in that case, I had been appearing and helping out with the case preparations. At that time, it was presentation of prosecution evidence. So I was helping them sort through the affidavits. I asked for help also from friends of Karen. We look at the affidavits, make a matrix. I remember that because the matrix was so big in the sense that what did these witnesses, like 4 or 5 witnesses, say about the abduction of Karen? So one witness says, I was there, da, 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 and then you write it down. And another witness says, oh, I only heard it from another. So for me, it was, in a sense, it was an exercise in the scientific method
Mm-hmm.
because you really need to go into the nitty gritty of what people say and what they don't say, right? So that was one of the first things I did. Well, I was still in law school then, so I just continued along. So I was always coming along to the hearings that the court staff were familiar with me already. And
Mm-hmm.
when I finally signed the role, so right after graduation, of course, you need to study a bit for the bar exams. And people kept chiding me. I remember because now the bar exams is coming up. I keep telling people that you can study for the bar even for just 3 months because I was busy with my paralegal work after finishing law school. That was March. I only started reviewing by July.
Oh
People
my
were so
goodness.
mad at me. They said, yeah, because I mean, people said, you should study for 6 months, like from March to September. But I only
Mhm.
started in July. But I then, thank you. And I was so lucky to have passed the 2013 bar exams. After the bar exams, and while waiting for my my the news of my passing or not. I think I worked in my mom's law office for a while. I helped with some Supreme Court cases. Oh, we did the Kalikasan case, the writ of Kalikasan case in 2014. Yes, as I was waiting for the bar exam results. If you remember the Tubataha reef that was damaged by a U.S. Vessel.
Hmm. I don't know
So
that
a
case
U.S.
specifically. Yeah, maybe explain a bit what happened in that case.
Yeah, so and also you might have been too young.
Yeah.
So I realized when you say, "Oh, do you remember?" We're not from the same generation, and maybe not. So okay, so in 2014, a U.S. destroyer or a vessel, sea vessel, hits the Tubataha Reef in Palawan, and this is an incredible area which has great biodiversity, which is even considered, I think, a UNESCO site.
Mhm.
So it was certainly terrible for not only for the Philippines per se, but also for the ecosystem in that area. We did the calculations, and oh, I remember I was so excited as well because there's scientific studies that you need to present to the court to say, um, please protect this area. So the writ of kalikasan, you have to apply for it, saying that this is the extent of the damage to this area. And we were asking for damages from this US fleet. Eventually, they did give uh, something million in damages,
Wow.
although technically our petition was dismissed. But I mean, it was kind of a tricky situation because there's international relations involved. That's the US and the Philippines. And the discovery that, wait, what is a US destroyer, a US ship doing on Philippine territory? And why did they come so near this reef area, which is protected already? So yeah, so many things. So anyway, I was waiting for the results. I was working on several cases, including the Kadapan and Peña case. When the results came out, and when I finally, there's another step, you need to sign the rolls. So my roll signing was on May 8th. I remember, if I'm right. So May 8th. The Kadapan Empeño case, I had a hearing on May 12th or 20th or something like that. So
Mhm.
close to the signing. And so my first like official appearance was at that hearing. And the staff were so happy to see me now appearing as a lawyer. So they even asked if I wanted like a certificate of attendance. Which I mean you don't need to, but I said, yeah, sure.
That's
So it was funny because that courtroom really saw how really saw my baby steps as a lawyer, as we call it, as underbar. So I graduated law school, but not yet passed the bar. So as an underbar, even as a law student, they saw me then until my first hearing as a lawyer. So yeah, it
amazing.
was really exciting
Yeah.
and amazing, right? Oh, because you did mention, now I'm recalling things more clearly. In April 2014, so this was right before I signed the role, I had already passed the bar exam. It had already been announced, but I needed to do the oath taking and the role signing. So I was ATTY without the period yet, like, just a little bit of logistics before you can actually appear. There was a conference in Brussels for the International Association of Democratic Lawyers. The NUPL, my organization, was a member of that. And they said, if anybody wants to go, come on over because this might be one of, it only comes every 6 years.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's now or never in a sense. Like, you're young now and you're free now. Do you wait for 6 years until the next one? And eventually it proved to be true in a sense that I needed to go then in 2014 because the next conference was last year,
Yeah. Oh, really?
2025.
Wow.
Because of the pandemic, the next conference would have been, or Congress would have been in 2020,
Hmm.
6 years after 2014. and it got delayed because of the pandemic. So it was a good thing. I went to Brussels then,
Yeah.
met a lot of lawyers, and yeah, I called it my baptism of fire, because as a fresh lawyer, I was meeting a lot of people. I was exposed to a lot of issues already. And that's when I really felt, uh, I think it's not that it's like, for many people, it's easy to romanticize. Like, oh, I'm doing some service. Maybe I'll do this for a while, or I'll do this in my spare time. When a lot of cases came to my table, like literally and figuratively, that's when I realized there was a lack of lawyers who really wanted to go into this work full time
I see.
and
Um,
worldwide.
yeah.
Because I met some lawyers from, I remember we also made like a youth sub unit of the
Wow.
IADL because we said, yeah, and then we did webinars before it was popular then.
That's
I think we did
amazing.
Yahoo video or
Before
something.
there was Zoom. So we are back. Sorry about that. Last we were just talking about that really interesting case. I think it's really cool to hear how you handled that, and kind of the achievement that came with that. And yeah, why don't we kind of transition to talking about your role in the ICC? For people who are not lawyers, can you first maybe explain what exactly is the ICC and why does it matter to Filipinos?
Well, the ICC is an international court in the sense that many countries came together and said, let's put up a common court. In layman's terms, I would even say this is like FIBA, the International Basketball
Yeah.
Association, the league, compared to NBA and PBA. So
Mm-hmm.
PBA, Philippine Basketball Association, it's all our, I mean, all Filipino. NBA, it's all American. That's a foreign court. And if we were to even, make it a bit smaller in scope, UAAP,
Mm-hmm.
or what's the other one? The NCAA, the leagues. So when different groups of the same type come together and agree on one thing, we'll play basketball, they're coming together under a common agreement. And so now back to the ICC, it's countries saying that, oh, we need to make and ensure that four crimes, so to be specific, there's four major, very grave crimes that need to be outlawed in our territories and properly dealt with, in a sense, worldwide. I mean, their intention really was to bring in all countries. Right now, they have 127 member countries under the ICC. And so the objective then is to make sure these four crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, war crimes, and later on they added this fourth crime, crimes of aggression, will be dealt with properly and with the same process across nations. This was partly one logistical frustration because previously, when some conflict came up in whichever part of the world, for example, Yugoslavia, they knew that, I mean, the international community knew that they had to address this situation, and maybe Yugoslavia was not in the best shape judicial wise. I mean, their systems were not yet in place and there was a lot of internal strife. They said, oh, yeah, this is where the international community can come in. And so, logistically, structurally, instead of coming in and setting up an international criminal tribunal for every country, in Yugoslavia, they have the ICTY. In Rwanda, they have the ICTR. In Sierra Leone, they had the STL. In Cambodia, they had the ECCC and so forth. They said, can we have one permanent court? So structurally and logistically, this was in response to that perhaps frustration with why not just make it permanent instead of ad hoc. Second, I think it was also a recognition that it's really time to put up something in with the same caliber, with the same framework as the United Nations in terms of law, in terms of courts, in a sense, because some crimes could happen or could be made or could be done transnationally.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the less powerful country would be at a loss on how to deal with it. And so crimes of aggression can be dealt with regardless of which country wins in the conflict, in a sense. For example, Ukraine versus Russia. Their options are essentially try the crimes that happened in Ukraine, but then Russia will say, well, you can't try our troops
Mm-hmm.
even if the crimes were committed in Ukraine, and vice versa. So is it Ukraine trying things that happen in Ukraine or over Ukrainian people, or Russia dealing with crimes committed by Russians within their territory? And then, so that's in a sense addressing crimes that could be committed transnationally. And lastly, I think the ICC was created in recognition of the in a sense the UN's pioneering work in making peace around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So these conflicts, in relation to the earlier discussion, these conflicts generally have an international dimension,
Mm-hmm.
and they involve personalities. It really doesn't involve, the country per se. For example, if we think about Germany and World War II, we would always have to put in the name of Adolf Hitler. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't all the Germans, in fact, who did the murdering. They could always point to Adolf Hitler who did this. But of course, he made so many other people believe. And so the framework that some things, that some bad things happen because of bad people, not necessarily because of a country. And so when you look at uh, these grave violations, there's really people behind that. And these people should and could, that's what the ICC addresses, the framework, the structure, how to punish them. People could be tried in international law. The other side of this had been the traditional sense of international law is it's country versus country. Yeah, so it's like the US versus Israel and so forth. And without realizing that there are people who need to be punished for their particular crimes. And there are people within these countries who might not agree with what their countries did. So that kind of progressive move in international criminal law was a call to action for all countries in the world to really come together and put their minds, their
Mm-hmm.
laws, their systems together and come up with something acceptable to all. And so the ICC is an international court that tries the four major, most severe crimes that, in the opinion of all these countries who have signed up, that should be punished and could be punished anywhere in the world.
That's a perfect definition. Thank you. Um, so what is your role in the ICC, or what is your relation to it for those who don't know?
So right now I am registered, accredited as assistant to counsel. I'm one of, I think, 1,000 assistants to counsel across the world who can appear before the court. We're called external counsels. So together with the counsels, we could assist in cases. But that does not mean I am, part of the ICC in a sense, in,
Mm-hmm.
in, in a more, what do you call it, in a more strict sense. When you
Mm-hmm.
say the ICC, it's really a court, and you are part of the court if you're an employee, you're part of, its everyday happenings going on. But myself, I'm external counsel, and I can come into the court via a case that I handle in the same way that, for example, in the Philippines, I am a Filipino lawyer, but I can only appear before the courts if I have a case. But I can go around and say, yeah, I know about Philippine law because I have studied Philippine law. I can give you advice, but to appear before the court, you need to be accredited and, sign the roll and all. And that's the time that you're recognized as well by the courts. And so, in at the same time that I can't really say part of, right? I was going to say that, but to be more precise, that I am assisting in the ICC. Uh, I assist the victims of the war on drugs in the Philippines, even before I signed up for this ICC external legal representative counsel position. The My involvement with the victims really came around 2016. At that time, I became an officer of the National Union of People's Lawyers National Capital Region. I was elected as a Secretary General. I was a young lawyer then, but I said, oh no, this is too tall an order. And then in came the war on drugs, and I said, oh no, this is going to be difficult, especially since the war on drugs then was concentrated and really started in Metro Manila. Come
Mm-hmm.
December, we were compelled essentially to come up with some sort of analysis of the war on drugs at that time. And so things really started from there. My relationship with this organization called Rise Up for Life and for Rights was very critical. And now that we think about it, not that I think about it, I realize there's a personal element, more or less, why I do things. So if I wanted to be a lawyer, partly because of the case of Karen and Peño, now I wanted to go into this field, into this issue of the war on drugs because of the victims. And the more I got to know them, the more I realized they needed help.
Maybe can you give the most impactful story that you've heard from one of these victims that really inspired you and kind of made you want to do it even more? Maybe like, yeah, just a story that you've heard that really was the kind of pushed you and said, this is what I want to do.
Of course, there's a lot of
Yeah.
stories. I guess, I mean, aside from the usual, because the usual would be attorney, I was sleeping inside our house, which and when you ask them to explain what do you mean by house, it's really just a one room house. It's the place where they sleep. It's their sala, it's their bedroom, it's their kitchen. It's a one room house. Because sometimes we could even there were even families who would say, "Oh, my husband was killed. We were sleeping, and then the police came in, woke us up, asked the children and women to leave, and then we heard shots, meaning their husbands had been killed. My husband was killed in the second floor of my house," and we're like, "Uh huh, uh huh." When you say second floor, it's because they have a makeshift or small ladder up there. Really, the word would be shanty. Up
Mm-hmm.
there, makeshift, not really house. It's 4 by 5 meters around and so
Wow.
forth. So it these stories were really impactful in the sense that when you say second floor, oh yeah, second floor. Or when you say house, it's house. But then, oh, okay, this is a really different area already. Although we did work with urban poor communities already, this
Mm-hmm.
was essentially for demolition cases.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a different sense of foreboding when they talk about armed men coming into your homes and at any given time killing the men or the young men in your communities. But
Yeah.
one of the really memorable stories that I've heard had been the story of a missing teenager
Mm-hmm.
who loved to play Dota and tagged along one of the Dota, like what do you call that? The best Dota players, Dota experts, is it right to call them that? It's
I think
the
so, yeah.
defense of the arts, the
Yeah.
computer Dota expert.
Yeah.
So the Dota expert. So you, I mean, in the beginning, I was trying to brush it off. Okay, it's a gamer like that. I was even thinking of Mobile Legends because I thought that was pointless. Sorry for the Mobile Legends players. I did try it once, but then I was thinking, oh, you have to keep on moving. But anyway, Dota. I knew Dota only as an addiction on the part of many of my friends then. So I have a lot of geek friends, especially in high school. They've always talked about Dota. My sister played Dota. Her now husband, formerly her boyfriend, would play Dota in our house. And we're like, okay, what is this? So anyway,
Yeah.
Dota player. This Dota player, this expert, he lives in Tarlac.
Hmm.
And then he says, "Can we go to?" Because it was so not really absurd. How would we call it? It was so incredible. The story was incredible. So the Dota expert says, I've beaten everybody in my area. So apparently there should be a LAN, local area network that where you play together. I've beaten everybody in this network in this area, and so there's a game, there's a tournament that's happening in Baguio City.
Hmm.
They hitchhiked their way up to Baguio City. This is a 17-year-old boy who
Wow.
was, and his 15-year-old friend tags along. They go to Baguio City hitchhiking on vegetable vans, trucks, and apparently it's kind of a thing. I mean, it wasn't that what do you call it? It wasn't a no-no for the mother. I mean,
Yeah.
these children have done this before. So we're
Yeah.
like, okay. So they hitchhiked, got lost apparently. Anyway, they were on their way back to Tarlac. One kid ends up dead
Hmm.
on the side of an expressway. Police say he's wanted in the area in Pangasinan. He lives in Tarlac, remember? So the police say in Pangasinan, he's a known robber. He's a known like akyat bahay gang member because he's young, and then police would always say, oh, that these gangs always draft young people so that they would be the ones who get into the windows of
Hmm.
houses, of establishments, and then they will open the lock, pick the lock from inside, and so forth. So anyway, that's their story. And the mother is like so baffled because the only addiction, my son is like an addict in a sense, but his only addiction is computer games. I don't
Yeah.
know how else will he find the time to be part of this gang in Pangasinan, which is like an hour, 2 hours away. So the
Yeah.
police paint a very bad story about this kid. And in fact, 17 years old, right? He was supposedly on a motorcycle
Hmm.
speeding past a checkpoint. The story keeps getting more incredible and incredible. And
Yeah.
past the checkpoint, the police say they go after him, and then they have a shootout, and then the motorcycle skids. So that's where they corner him, and in his pockets were drug paraphernalia, or maybe drugs, I forgot. And so the mother says, that's not the story. And the thing in this case is these this kid so had a companion, one, and another companion. So they were three in total, these kakabarkada. There were three of them who went to Baguio, three of them coming back. But along the highway, while hitchhiking, two of them say, wait, we want to rest a bit. And this one kid says, let me go ahead. I want to catch up with like this truck or something. He manages to get home and tells this story to the mother. And so the mother goes to, trying to search for her kid in Baguio, down to Tarlac. And then she just finally finds her kid in the morgue,
Mhm.
dead. And so we're still looking for the 15-year-old Julio Sebastian,
Wow.
who was last seen along the highway, again, by a friend who left them there,
Hmm.
thinking and meaning to go ahead. And from his point of view, I mean, he had left these two people together, and then he was so surprised. He was so heartbroken when he was told that, well, Joshua is dead in a morgue in Pangasinan, and we can't find Julius. And he's like, what? We were just out for an adventure, and I'm pretty sure right now he's not doing any like adventures on his own anymore
Yeah.
because of that traumatic. So yeah, so that story
Incredible story.
really
Yeah.
stuck with me because this is something that, I mean, you can take it to court.
Yeah.
because there's no, I mean, if the theory is the police took him, we would need proof that these two kids were taken in by the police. But, we went to Pangasinan and did kind of a reconstruction. We were knocking on people's doors. We were asking, we had their pictures, and then we were asking the store owners, "Have you seen this kid? Do you remember?" And we were trying to be low key about it. Then we realized, you can't really be low key when you're looking for someone this young.
Mm-hmm. It's an incredible story. It's really interesting to see kind of like the side I think many people don't get to hear every day. Maybe like when they just talk about drug war, they don't hear these like personal stories of who it actually affects. Um, but kind of
Yeah.
steering
And
back to you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, sorry, I just remember that this kid had a tattoo. So
Mm-hmm.
for your listeners who might be into Dota,
Yeah.
so this kid had a tattoo, the dead kid had a tattoo of Lady Pain. And the police were saying, oh, this is proof that he's part of a gang. And then the community of Dota players were kind of defending him. Like, no, it's of Lady Pain. This is not a gang sign, and so forth. So they were really at a loss. I remember the group or the website, Mineski or Mineski. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of popular in the gaming community. They put up a post about Joshua Laksamana.
It's incredible. That's so great to hear. Um, but kind of, shifting back to you, as we kind of come a bit to a close, I think one of my last questions would be, what is the biggest lesson you wish a woman my age thinking pursuing law should consider, or any advice you have to someone like me who wants to go into law in the future?
Well, the first one would be practical in the sense that you have to really know the logistics. Law school or being a lawyer is not just a pipe dream like, I want to go to court and present myself like, good morning, Your Honor, and so forth. So in the same way that Elle Woods, that was my lesson from Legally Blonde, that Elle Woods prepared for law school. Remember that she studied really hard for the LSATs. That's what they have in the US. She got a 179 or something. Or I remember the moment, oh guys, girls, I got this grade like that.
Yeah.
So be practical about it. So know what goes into going to law school and being a lawyer. And that would mean which law school do you go to? And law school is all about reading. So if you think you're going to survive on, sheer wit,
Mm-hmm.
no, you need to read a lot and you need to, it's like for me, it's elementary style of learning where if the professor says this, it's this, this is the answer. Of course, eventually, when you memorize or when you're so adept at what should be, that's where you can be a bit more creative and say, maybe we can try this. It depends. So you really need to master the law first. So that's really crucial. You need to learn how to read quicker than at the pace where you might be reading now. It means reading cases up to 100 pages long in 30 minutes and understanding everything that was in it.
Yeah.
Understanding and recognizing which law schools cater to which talent or which skill. For example, well, during my time, UP was thought of as a practice school. Like this school prepares you for practice, while, for example, Ateneo would be known as a bar school. So a bar-oriented school, they will teach you the basics, but not really the, you know, law school practice afterwards, etc. So San Sebastian, San Beda, these are very, very competitive schools and so forth. So be familiar with the logistics. But in second, I guess the biggest takeaway would be find something personal about it, about law school. It could really drain you, your resources, your energy. It does take a while before you become like a lawyer before you can really own it. In fact, some of the fresh graduates now would say, I don't feel it still. Like, am I a lawyer? I mean, before you can get the hang of it, of course, there's some who are really born to be lawyers in a sense. But you need something personal because, in a sense, you might lose your humanity along the way. You keep hearing about all these lawyers who have been bought off or who are defending criminals. Essentially, they could do so. I mean, those defending criminals, because criminals have the right to due process. So be personal, but at the same time, understand that there's limits to the law. What the law says is this, and everybody deserves due process. So when you say, okay, I will defend my friends, I will defend my father's friends, my mother's friends, it's not that kind of take it personal. Maybe take on a cause. Say that I really want, for example, more women in the law. Yeah, more women representation. In my time, the only like popular woman lawyer then in practice was Evelyn Ursua. Ging Ursua, she was defending a rape case in Subic. Oh, not defending, sorry. She was helping the rape victim in the
Yeah.
Subic case. But now you can see a lot of representation in media, most especially. So maybe you would like to have more representation in media in the future. Or, for example, you really feel for battered women or for and the environment. So find something personal that you want to pursue, and and that is when the law will come naturally to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's great advice. Maybe I'll share with you kind of the reason that I wanted to start in law, ever since I was 12 was because this was during COVID times. So us kids, we didn't have,
12
yeah, us kids when we were,
during COVID. Oh
yeah,
my
during
God.
COVID, we didn't have much to do. So I remember my friend was trying to prank me by pretending to blackmail me. Um, Made this whole fake Instagram account. And I remember instead of going to my parents or telling a trusted adult, I took a very unconventional path and I pretended that I had a lawyer on retainer. And I searched up all these cyberbullying laws, defamation laws, and I sent that to the person. 10 minutes later, I got a full apology, and I really realized the power of law. And since then, yeah, I think since then, I wanted to go into law.
Oh, that's well. I was going to say lovely, but I mean it's not as an experience. But
Yeah.
that's a great kind of cause to move forward with because I think there's a lack of like lawyers who really focus on bullying and cyberbullying.
I agree. Yeah.
I've had, and I think the Gen Zs, that's your generation, right? The
Hmm.
Gen Zs would really be a big help because in law, I mean, law is still catching up.
Hmm.
Sorry, but I mean, screenshots, the comments on Facebook, on Twitter, etc., it's not yet as well appreciated by the Supreme Court. Thankfully, now we're moving along, and the courts are realizing that these words really have an impact. Maybe for the elderly, it's like it's just words.
Yeah.
Nobody sees it. I mean, maybe from that point of view, but then, as you know, it could really affect you personally and reputationally.
Especially
So
with
yeah, that's a
the,
good.
yeah, especially with the rise of AI and how much things can be like, for example, fake nowadays. It's definitely something to look out
Oh.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, so you said your photos were manipulated?
No, it was more like I remember I
Oh.
think it was just like screenshots of me saying something online in a chat and they threatened to
Oh.
release it. It wasn't anything bad, but it was like a harmless prank.
Okay.
A lot of us were like really bored back then, so it was like anything to have fun when we were in COVID. But I think it kind of showed how I didn't take it as a harmless prank and that's what kind of really sparked my interest in the power of law.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah. Well, I think I've learned so much from today's interview. It's really inspiring to hear your story, especially how, you've kind of intersected science and journalism and law and how you've turned that into becoming such a great advocate for people around the Philippines. So thank you so much for your time today. It was really incredible to hear your story.
Thank you too, and hope to see you around.
Yeah, and I think that will conclude today's episode. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.